Hello to all of the alchemists and storytellers and anyone else who happens upon this video, whether you've come from our Alchemist Inkwell podcast, from the Forgotten Storytellers program, or simply from TikTok and Instagram, where you might know me as The Real Crystalline. I just want to wish you a happy new year. It is a calendar new year. We are now into January 2022, and I'm just really excited to share with you a brief overview of some of the astrology we're looking ahead to in January as we begin this new year. So what we're going to do is we're going to go basically in 7-day increments with really heavy focuses on the lunations, that's the new moon and the full moon, as well as the ingress of the sun from Capricorn into Aquarius, which is, of course, Aquarius season. We're also going to be touching on Mercury retrograde and any sort of stations like that, which will include Mercury, Venus, and Uranus all changing direction this month. So it is a dynamic month with plenty to look forward to. Most recently, we did have Jupiter moving into Pisces on December 28th, which is a great thing that is really bolstering and boosting some of the energy of all the other things that are happening. So while it may not make everything sunshine and daisies, it is giving us that Jupiterian bolster fortune that goes along with Jupiter in Pisces, which it does traditionally rule, and is actually sharing space with Neptune, which the way I like to view it, I will say that Neptune agrees with the themes of Pisces and is also in Pisces. In modern astrology, they will say that Neptune rules Pisces. So Jupiter and Neptune, those two who agree most with the energy of Pisces, are actually present in Pisces right now. So there's a lot of under the surface depth going on, expansion of the unconscious, a lot of spirituality being infused into the things that we do, and opportunities to really expand our awareness. So if you're looking to do that, this is a great place for you, and we will dive right in beginning on January 2nd. Actually, we'll touch on January 1st when the sun trines Uranus on New Year's Day. So this is actually pretty cool because the sun is our energy, it is our motion, it is our identity, and it is, of course, what helps us mark the calendar year, moving each day as it does. So what the sun is doing as it trines Uranus, trines are positive, they're generally easy flowing. So if you consider aspects between positive or negative, let's reframe that and say ease and challenge. The trine is the most ease that you can present in an aspect. So with the sun trine Uranus, the sun is blessing Uranus with its approval on some of the changes that Uranus is bringing. At this point, Uranus is still retrograde. So a lot of these changes are behind the scenes and slow in the process of unfolding. And Uranus is at this point also still pretty close in orb with that square with Saturn, which will be a running theme through 2022 as it was through 2021. So I wouldn't worry too much about if Saturn-Uranus square is going to be a new thing that you have to be concerned about. I wouldn't recommend anybody ever feel concerned at all. It's just a matter of witnessing the unfolding of events and aligning with them and flowing with them to the best of your ability with the resources that are around you in the moment. So in this situation, the sun is saying, hey, Uranus, those changes you're bringing, these are the positive changes. These are in flow, in alignment with where we're headed as a human race, as just where time is taking us. So I like to think of this as shining light on some change that's happening. Maybe you become aware of that new year, new me mentality, and you bring that with you. You're making a lot of decisions right now about where you want to set your intentions for this year ahead. So the sun is just really putting some wind underneath those wings and really helping out with making decisions, changing our mind where we need to change it, and aligning what we want with what we're thinking about moving into, especially when it comes to your resources, your finances, things that are valuable to you, things that support you. That is because Uranus is in Taurus. So Taurus rules the second house of finances, of again, those things that support you, that are physically supportive to you. So material possessions, things like that. Maybe as part of your new year refresh, you've decided to go through and see if there's anything that you can give away or clear your energy or clear your space with. So things like that may come up around this time. And if it does, fantastic, you're in alignment. If it doesn't, then this is just not the time for you to have that feeling. And there will be other times. Remember, all of these are also relative to your own individual nativity chart, which is fantastic. So you are your own walking astrology chart, an expression of the alignment that was there in the sky when you were born. And these are going to affect you in unique ways. So if you're looking throughout this video to see, well, what does that mean for me? You can think of the sign that I talk about the planets being in, the sun at this point in Capricorn, Uranus in Taurus, and find those signs on your nativity chart, then find the house number, the number on the wheel that is associated with that sign, and then that house is the one that is being affected by this transiting Uranus or this transiting sun or whatever planet we end up talking about. And then you'll know that that area of life that that house governs is the one that may be experiencing those changes. So wherever Taurus is on your chart, that may be experiencing changes. And again, it has been since about 2018 when Uranus, a slow mover, first entered into Taurus. So that is January 1st, the sun blessing us with a little bit of change via Uranus. And then on the 2nd, we move right into our first lunation of January, which is a new moon in Capricorn. Now, if you're interested in timing for this new moon will happen and be exact around 1:34 p.m. Eastern time, where I am. So if you're thinking about doing something to honor this new moon, I recommend the evening after the exact, since we have that opportunity while the moon will still be in Capricorn, I believe, and will still definitely be in that full phase, but separating from that opposition, which is what a new moon is. It's an opposition. Oh, sorry, the conjunction between the sun and the moon. The conjunction of the sun and the moon creates a new moon because the sun does not shine on the moon. They're in the same place. So the moon kind of gets in the way and is dark. So at that point, if you want to honor the energy of a new moon, I would do it in the evening after the new moon so that that separation of the conjunction is occurring, but you're still in that new moon phase. So what can we look at for the themes of this new moon? Well, the moon is in Capricorn with the sun, and Capricorn is not the moon's favorite place to be. It's actually considered in detriment in Capricorn, because if you think about the moon being very watery, being something high in the sky that likes to shine light, at this point, it's on the ground. So imagine rolling the moon in a little bit of dirt and it's got that dirt on it. It's not at its brightest. It's not at its shiniest. It's not able to shine the way that it would like to, especially being in a new moon phase. So there's not a lot of light for it to shed forth either. So with this situation, it's not a bad thing. What I would say is rather than being active with this energy, it's a great time for rest, to really allow yourself that peace, quiet, and stillness, maybe even some solitude, to just be with yourself and allow yourself to embrace. We always talk about high vibes. This is a great time to honor low vibes, stillness, grounding, earthing, all of those things that you can do to really bring your energy back to you. Focus on the moment that you're in, take things one step at a time. So as far as manifesting goes, and excuse my voice right now, but as far as manifesting goes with this new moon, I know a lot of people like to manifest, to envision things to come. So I would give you the affirmation of I anticipate positive change going along with that sun still being in trine with Uranus at this point, which means the moon is as well, because they are together in the sky at this point. And also just keeping in mind that Jupiter is in Pisces currently at this point. It is in a position he's called at the bend of the nodes. So if you consider the north and south node of the moon, those horseshoe icons that you might see on your chart, Jupiter is halfway between the two of them, helping us to really assess how far we've come and to really plan for where we want to go, expanding the awareness of where we are, again, being very present in the moment and grounding. So that is another aspect to take in mind. And we have a lot of a lot of decisions that we're coming up into making. So if you're feeling like you're at a turning point, that is totally accurate and aligned with the energy that we are feeling right now. We still have the Saturn square Uranus, so there are still a lot of changes to structures and to the stability in our environment that are happening. So we're kind of rolling with that energy a little bit. We're assessing again where we've been and where we're going. And we are looking at, on the same day, Mercury actually coming into Aquarius. So Mercury is coming up with brilliant ideas, new ideas, and it's getting ready to retrograde. So if you're thinking about new things that you want to try, this is a great opportunity to list the things that you are excited about trying, list the changes that you are excited about bringing forth, and then prepare to really plan them out, think them through, experiment with them over the period that will be coming in the middle of the month when Mercury actually does station retrograde in Aquarius and then backwards into Capricorn. So for the new moon, I anticipate positive change, and that is a great way to think and to feel during this new moon. If you want to do something, have an action to go along with it, I recommend writing a list of things that aren't working for you right now, places where you feel stuck, and then write the very next step that you can take to create some sort of progress. What is one thing you can do if you are here? What is the very next step that you can take that will lead you to at least the next step? You don't have to have the entire image or the entire future figured out, but just that next best step. And if you write that down, it gives you a plan, it gives you something to do, somewhere to go, and a forward motion, which will move you towards the next step, and it will eventually get you where you're going. Aside from that, on the same day, like I said, we do have Mercury coming into Aquarius. And then on the 3rd, Jupiter will be exactly at that bend of the nodes, which is something that we may not feel personally, but it is just something that is kind of cool and unique to see. So we are at that sort of eye of the storm where we can tell where we've been, we've learned a lot, and now we're just taking a breath before we begin to finish what we've started. So that's a lot of positivity into moving into the work that is still ahead and into creating whatever future it is that you have in mind for yourself. And then on the 5th, Venus retrograde will actually sextile Neptune. Now, I want to talk about sextiles a little bit. I've had people asking me questions where we talk about a trine being the most ease and flow you can get in an aspect. A sextile is also pretty easy, but I like to think of them as opportunities. So it's something that you notice, and if you want to take advantage of it, you can, or it is something that you have the opportunity to say yes or no to, and then see what happens for you in that context. So with retrograde Venus already pretty internal, already thinking about our relationships with what our boundaries are, with what relationships mean to us, with where we stand with the people around us, and the values that we hold dear that really help us to define our relationships and who we are in relationships. That is actually forming an opportunity with Neptune for this spiritual insight that can come along with it. So it's a perfect day to meditate, feel the emotions of joy and love, and then see what words or images or however it comes up for you, what comes up to go along with those feelings so you can identify what they look like actively in your life. So that is the first 7 days of January. And then we move into the second week with the sun conjoining Venus on January 8th. So Venus, still retrograde at this point, will conjoin with the sun, kind of marking a halfway point in the retrograde cycle. So we're getting there. And now the sun is here saying, hey, you've been through all this. How are you feeling about it? Check in. What does this mean for you? And as we finish and complete this retrograde cycle, what are you going to now take that you've learned, that you've reworked, and begin integrating and begin processing so that when we go into that post-shadow phase, once retrograde turns direct again, we will recover the degrees that Venus is covering. So it's an opportunity to then solidify, to say, I've learned, and now here's my renewed action that I'm going to take with all the education I've gotten over that month-long Venus retrograde, which will complete this month. So with the sun conjoining Venus, it's a great opportunity to check in with yourself, see how things have been going with you over the last 2 weeks or since Venus began her retrograde, and then see what that means to you, what you want to continue to work on, what changes you may may want to make now that you've been through a little bit and want to really assess where you stand, what's important to you, what are your values and ideals. Then on the 10th, the sun will sextile Neptune the way Venus did. So this is creating an identity of what your spirituality is. It's really bringing it. Again, the sun shines light on things. It is our identity. It is our authority. So it's us being excited and standing in our power and taking action from the roots up. So if you think about the sun sextile Neptune, the sun is still in Capricorn. It's still thinking about what's important, foundational things that are ready to set us up for a year ahead. Where are we standing as we face the future? And Neptune is saying, what are your ideals that go along with that? What visions are going to support your goals? So it's a really great time to, it's been a week at this point, check in with your resolutions, see how they're going. Do they need to be tweaked? And what ideals are they serving? What do you get out of doing all of these things? Does it serve you, or is it an expectation you're trying to fulfill for someone else? And how aligned is it truly with your own ideals, with your own spirituality, with your own ethics, things like that, those deeper unconscious things. And if you're working on healing something in yourself, you may notice an opportunity to really bring some of that healing up to the surface where you can see it in action around this time as well. The next day on the 11th, Mars will square Neptune. So whatever you've been focusing on as far as expanding your spiritual identity, you may find an opportunity to really work on something that comes into conflict. That's what a square will do for us. So a square is actually forming a right angle. And I will bring up the new moon chart here just to show you. I forgot to do that a second ago. So we'll actually look at this really quickly and I will show you some of the things coming up with that. So when we look at a square, it actually looks like this red line here and that red line there, forming, as you can see, a little square. So this is Jupiter at the bend of the nodes, as we talked about. And the square that we're noticing between Mars and Neptune is coming into form here. It hasn't happened exactly yet. You can see the degrees are a little bit different, but these two are far enough away from each other that they will be forming a square on the 11th of January. And so that is saying, hey, you're working on a lot of spiritual stuff right now. What's working? What doesn't? In case you needed a reminder of what's not working, here's a little problem to solve or a challenge to work out. And that's what squares do. They create conflict, which gives us the notification that something has the ability to be improved on or worked on. So we are seeing that with the Mars square Neptune on the 11th. I'm going to quickly stop sharing my screen so that we don't see me switching charts, because that can look a little bit confusing sometimes. All right, so then we move into the next week, which will, there we go, which is going to bring us not quite up to the full moon of January, but it does have a couple things that we want to look at, including and beginning with Mercury's retrograde. So Mercury will begin retrograde on January 14th. It has been in the pre-shadow phase of retrograde since December 29th, which is actually the day I'm recording this video. So since December 29th, Mercury has been covering the degrees between 24 Capricorn and 10 Aquarius. Now we know Mercury came into Aquarius during the new moon, so we've come all the way to 10 degrees at Aquarius since then. So thinking about what's been going on in your life since just before New Year's Eve, those things may actually have the opportunity to get really well practiced and really well thought out in the process of this Mercury retrograde, which will last until February 3rd. So between January 14th and February 3rd, Mercury will retrace the degrees between 24 Capricorn and 10 Aquarius, which it first covered from the 29th of December until the 14th of January when it turns retrograde. So it will recover those beginning in Aquarius. So thinking about all those brilliant ideas that you've been having maybe inspired by that new moon or maybe around that time. What's come up for you? What thoughts, what ideas, what humanitarian or causes or things have just become really important to you that have become an important part of your ideals that you want to work on? This is an opportunity to have sparks of inspiration, to make radical decisions that can change things one way or another, and to give them the time and the ability and the slowness and the consciousness, the consciousness to work on them. Retrograde is moving backwards, and it's also a very slow process. It's the planet not moving as fast as it usually does from our perspective here on Earth. And so what it gives us the opportunity to do is take our time or revise something that's already been done. So during retrograde, it's a perfect time to be workshopping your ideas, workshopping the plans that you've come up with. Maybe you had the idea. Now you're going to see if in theory it will work. Do you have what you need to put it together? Can you imagine the next steps? Can you plan out that process bit by bit and make sure that it is something that will be sustainable moving forward? And then at a certain point in the retrograde, Mercury will also be going back into Capricorn, giving you the opportunity to really assess how supported these plans are. So Capricorn, very supported from the ground up. So this is something that, since both of these signs are traditionally ruled by Saturn, you want to be aware of the structure going along with these ideas, with whatever's coming up for you. So I like to think of Mercury retrograde, especially in this case. General things to be aware of is glitches. Aquarius can be pretty electric, so you might notice some technology glitches, but also anything that is foundationally in need of support. It's sort of like infrastructure things being redone or re-supported or reworked, and just not necessarily renovating, but doing maintenance on things that already exist and doing maintenance on where you are so that it can support growth to where you want to be and that futuristic ideal that you're looking towards with these brilliant Mercury ideas that you've come up with. So that's a general overview of things that might come up during Mercury retrograde. Also, definitely check out where Capricorn and Aquarius fall in your own chart, because those areas of life may give you even more insight into what's coming up for you personally during this retrograde. Mercury is a personal planet, so we do feel its movement and we do feel those things a little bit more close to home than maybe with some of the outer planets. Next, on the 16th, just before the full moon, the sun will conjoin Pluto. And the sun is vivacious, it is life, it is energy giving. And Pluto, being very far out from the sun, is a little bit colder, a little bit darker, something that likes to either bury or exhume some information or things that are going on. So with the sun conjoining Pluto in the sky, we get this dichotomy of energy feeling a little bit like there's something under the surface that may be coming up and coming into light. Pluto is currently in Capricorn as well. There's a lot of Capricorn happening right now. So Pluto has been there for a long time. It's a fun fact that Pluto helps us define different generations. So the Alpha generation, or Gen Alpha, is Pluto in Capricorn generation, and that is coming to a completion over the next few years. But right now we do have Pluto still in Capricorn, still very slowly making his way through. And the sun at this point will be shining light on things that may be under the surface, may be hidden, may need to be just noticed. So this is an opportunity to really take action with any shadow work or anything that's coming up for you that it's like, wow, I thought that that was long gone, but here it is with the opportunity for me to do something about it and really lay it to rest. So if something does come up, it is to be seen, to be understood, and then to be laid to rest so that you can, in the process of thinking psychologically, it might come up for you to recognize something to be processed, to be integrated, and then to be put to rest as part of your unconscious, as part of your programming moving forward, something that is now fixed and resolved. So that is an opportunity that may come up at that time. Again, Pluto is a very slow mover, so we actually may notice this more in society, in the headlines, in things going on around us, certain things coming up saying, hey, this is still a problem. It needs attention now. That is something I would also look at in the headlines, or if you're following any kind of news that day. It would not be surprising around January 16th to see something come up that says, hey, this is still an issue and we need to do something with it. All right, so now we get to move into the full moon on January 17th. And this time I am going to remember to share the screen at the same time. So we are looking at January 17th, this full moon. And along with this full moon, the full moon is in Cancer. And I really like this for us because the moon rules Cancer. This is the moon's happy place. So with the moon being in Cancer, you can see it here on the chart that I've drawn up simply for New York City as a general chart. The placement of all the planets on the wheel is not so important in this case because it will change depending on where you are. But the moon being in Cancer, the planets being in the signs that they're in, and the aspects they're making to each other, these are still very relevant. So we are looking at the moon in Cancer. And at the same time, it is forming trines with Neptune, another spiritual situation. And that's really great. So again, this is a great time for releasing limiting beliefs. I apologize for releasing limiting beliefs that may be coming up for you. So one of the affirmations that I do recommend for this lunation is I trust myself to make wise decisions. This is an encouragement to go really deep, to meditate and release anything that is in your way of really understanding your true self, of connecting with whatever highest expression you know you have the potential to have. This is a perfect day to really tap into what that feels like so you can carry that with you from this moment forward. Again, we also have Jupiter in Pisces, not exactly trine, as you can see Jupiter's way over here, not exactly trine the moon, but Jupiter is very much influencing the Piscean energy and expanding that for us. So again, with the spiritual expansion happening here, that's really important to keep in mind. Let me just consult my notes, make sure I've mentioned everything that needs to be mentioned. Saturn is still conjoined Mercury as it has been since Mercury turned retrograde. Mercury gets very close to Saturn and then decides to back up. So we have this conjunction that is going to be lasting for a little while, helping us to really, again, structure those ideas that we have for ourselves. And that is something that still plays into the energy of this full moon. So we're very discerning about what we're thinking. We're very discerning about what's important, what matters, what is going to, again, last into the future. Aquarians can be very futuristic, very forward thinking several steps ahead, so far ahead that maybe time has not caught up with them yet. So if you're thinking very much into the future, this is a great time to consider what still needs to be resolved, what still needs to be removed. That might be an obstacle in your path, and release that along with anything that you're working on releasing for this full moon. Again, I trust myself to make wise decisions is a really helpful affirmation to repeat to yourself as you are experiencing or honoring this energy. One of the things that I recommend in practice is to check in with your priorities. Are they yours or are they someone else's? Is it something that is important to you, or is it something that someone has told you is what you should be? And so you're trying to live up to this ideal that doesn't come from inside you, that doesn't come from something that you can actually trace back to why it's important to you. And if you have something like that, that's not important to you, but it's something that you are trying to appeal to some outer source with, that is something that might be good to let go. Or if you still want to continue it, track it and attach it and understand how it actually is important to you. Because if you're not really willing or ready to let go of something, then it is serving you somehow. And if you can understand why, that will help you decide whether it is something that is based in values or if it's something based in fear that can be let go. So I would recommend making a mood board for yourself at this point, because the moon is really shining light on our intentions. It's saying, hey, this is what's important to me. Full moons, in contrast to new moons, are actually the opposition between the moon and the sun. So they are creating this sort of opportunity for balance and an opportunity for tension between what I want and what I need. And you get objective view that you can see between the two. So you are standing in the middle and you can see both sides. That is what an opposition actually allows us to do as an aspect. It creates sort of this tightrope between the two planets being aspected. And in this case, it is the sun and the moon. So it's what I want versus what I need. And do those align? And is there anything that is in the way of those being aligned? And what can you do to really release what you've understood now is not really necessary? Again, we're shining a lot of light on what we've been doing since this new moon. We began something then, and now we're coming to the culmination of it, where we now understand this is what that's doing. And maybe I want to take some of this with me as I go and complete this cycle. And maybe some of it is not really necessary to take along with me, and I can release that and let it go and let it sort of wind down as we come into preparing for the next month, which is the next lunar cycle, which begins again and begins anew actually on the, I believe, the 1st of February, we will actually have the next new moon. So you still have 2 weeks of just processing, working with, and enjoying everything that's been going on this month. And again, that's how months work. Isn't that cool to make that correlation? So that is our full moon in Cancer, a fantastic time for charging your crystals, for charging up your moon water, things like that, because this is the time of the year where the moon is full in her home sign. So this is a really nice energy to be setting those intentions with and to be honoring those things, cleansing crystals and charging them and all of those things. Then on the 18th, we actually have the official shift of the nodes. So I had mentioned them a little bit earlier. Here's what they look like. So when I talked about the little horseshoes on your chart, it's these guys. So we have the North Node currently in Gemini, and directly opposite is the South Node. These are based on the moon. And it's based on a concept called declination, how high or low the moon is compared to the middle ecliptic line in the sky. So what we're looking at here is our nodes will let me see if I can actually move this forward for us a few days, and I will show you what this looks like in process. So one day after the moon, we will see that they shift. They went from 0 degrees of Gemini backwards, as they do, into 29 degrees of Taurus. So this is the nodal shift. We don't need 2 charts. We can just look at the one. So looking at that, we know that on the next day, and of course it wants to do 2 charts so that I can see the 2. So look at the outer one here, and you can actually see the comparison between the full moon and the day when everything shifts over into the Taurus and Scorpio axis as compared to the Gemini and Sagittarius one. What is this going to look like, and how do we know about this in our actual life? It is actually based on the eclipses. So the solar and lunar eclipses over the next year and a half will now take place in Taurus and Scorpio for, again, I think until April of next year, we will experience them in these places. So what you might notice in your life is wherever Taurus and Scorpio fall in your life, it's going to be going through an interesting transformation where something pivotal might be changing and happening over the next year and a half. People who experience this in the 1st and 7th houses may find newness in their personal identity and their relationships with people who come and go in their lives and become very important, and prominent new turning points happen in these areas. So an eclipse is, I like to think about it as a sharp and sudden, but very pointed alignment. If you imagine yourself moving through life as a train on a track and you get a little rickety at some points, the eclipses will make sure that you get steady again. So they will put you back on track right where you need to be to make sure that everybody is where they are, where they need to be in whatever moment we are in time at that point. So the reason I also often talk about, and we'll talk about this later when we get to eclipses in the year, but the reason I talk about eclipses as things that you maybe don't want to actively manifest with is because it's for everybody. It is a getting back on track, getting everybody where they need to be, giving everyone sort of their spiritual download, saying, hey, you are here. This is your function. You're doing great. Keep going. As compared to us saying, okay, this is where I am. This is where I want to go. All of those things. Eclipses are a little bit different. This, however, is just a regular full moon, but the nodes just in their motion are shifting. And you'll know that because the sun and the moon, which is over here at this point, are still pretty far away from the nodes. In order to get an eclipse, we actually will need the sun and the moon to be in the same signs as these nodes. So that is not happening right now. This is not an eclipse. This is just a full moon that happens to coincide with the nodes changing signs. And also on this day, Uranus, if you notice the difference here, where's my Uranus? Over here. Uranus moves direct. So on the day of the new moon, Uranus is still retrograde. You can tell by the red numbers on this chart. But on the day that we're looking at, on January 18th, just one day later, same exact degree, because again, Uranus is a slow mover. but it is direct. The numbers are now black because Uranus has stationed and is now moving direct. So Uranus brings a lot of changes, and it has been retrograde for quite a while. And so, as it's been retrograde, it has been helping us revamp things, make changes that needed to be redone. Again, more like maintenance. Now, these changes will move forward. So, we've maintained whatever it is that we are working on, and now we can see how it runs, how it takes us forward, how it brings about change, and all of these things that we're looking forward to seeing. All right. And then that actually takes us right into Aquarius season, which I have another chart for. So you get to see me swap out the charts here. So for Aquarius season, what that means is the sun has just moved into Aquarius, and you can see it down here. I hope you can see my cursor. There we go. You can see it down here where the sun is at 0 degrees Aquarius. Now for the sun, because the sun is the ruler of Leo, and Aquarius is opposite of Leo, the sun is actually considered in detriment in Aquarius, but that's not to say that it's necessarily like gloom and doom. It does this every year. So we all know what that January, February feels like. Maybe we don't have the most energy that we do throughout the rest of the year. It's a time where we're kind of separated from the warmth, separated from heat, separated from that time of year, that, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, that provides a lot of warmth and generating energy. So regardless of where you are, when the sun is in Leo, I expect that we can have more generating energy, more fierce energy, that lion kind of, I'm ready to do something kind of energy. But at this point, the sun is out of its element. It's not where it's comfortable. So it's not able to burn as brightly to make things function as well as it normally would. And that's, again, not to say that it's doing anything other than what it does any year, but it's just a fun fact to know as far as astrology goes. So we have Aquarius season with the sun being in detriment over the next 30 days or so as it travels through Aquarius. And during this time, if we look at the Aquarius chart, this ingress chart, this moment that the sun comes into Aquarius as an idea of the birth chart for the month, we might get to see some themes of what may happen through Aquarius season and what we might be able to anticipate as we're coming into this time. So we do have the moon in Leo is trine Mars in Sagittarius. So a lot of ambitious energy happening, preparing to apply interests. There we go. Preparing to focus our energy on people and on their needs of growth as a group. So Aquarian energy, once again, is very humanitarian. It's very societal. It's very forward thinking. So with the moon and Mars, the moon right here, in trine with Mars, having this aspect of, hey, we've got a lot of vision, we've got a lot of energy, we really have the ambition to want to do this. Now we're saying, how can we really propel our focus on the people around us, on where we fit into society, on how we can grow as a community? So those are some things that may pop up. You may notice an effort towards community growth, towards supporting people, towards things like that during this month. At the same time, we have the sun will be in the same sign as Saturn. So they're going to be hanging out for a while. And Saturn, of course, is still in its dance with Uranus. Even though Uranus is now direct, it is still pretty close in aspect. And now that it's direct, Uranus will be inching towards that 14 degree as Saturn is moving away. So they're going to kind of play a little game of tag back and forth throughout the year, staying within a pretty close degree, getting really tight in October, but just hanging out and saying, hey, those things that need to be fixed, we want to make sure that we really have time to focus on those. So knowing that this month brings the sun in, saying to Saturn, hey, the structure, let's get this worked out. I'm here with you. Let's work on this together, is something that is really, I would say, something to look forward to. I tend to be an optimist. I tend to look at energy as happening for us. So the fact that we now get to shed light on the structures that are being rebuilt really, to me, says that we're getting ready to support ourselves moving forward. So that's a really nice sign to see. We also have the sun getting ready to conjoin Mercury in retrograde. Again, Mercury is swinging back this way. So they're going to be like ships passing in the night. And that will mark at that point when we're about halfway through that Mercury retrograde, which continues on into February on the 3rd. So we're reviewing anything that is infrastructurally still in need of work, fixing things that might be broken or in opportunity for improvement, and really looking at structures and systems and saying, okay, my focus is here. What can I do? How can I organize this? How can I make sure that this is ready to sustain, to support, to stand when we move on and when we move on to other things? Because the last thing you want to have to worry about after you've built something is it going to fall apart? Now we're saying we're going to make sure this is step by step, detail by detail worked on, so that we can make sure that we don't have to think back on it, because we know we did it right that time that we were able to revisit thanks to Mercury, but also just really analyze and look at the structures of things going on that will support society. So long term, very good thing. And again, for Aquarius season, if you're looking for an affirmation and things to do, I like to think of Aquarius season as I change the world with my choices and my energy and my attention. Remember, this may be a very collective experience, but everything you do, every choice you make, every decision that you have, that you are presented with, makes a difference. It is part of that collective experience that we all have. So you are taking action, which has a ripple effect. Everything you do is important. So I hope that you understand that you are important. You are a part of this massive collective that we are living in. And that means that you are just as valuable as anybody else that you see around you, as anybody that you may see as more valuable than you. I like to think of the quote in Course in Miracles that there really is no scale when it comes to a miracle. Every miracle is equal in value, and that is the same. And a very Aquarian way to think, that whole equity idea of everybody being equal in value and bringing to the table just as much as anyone else. And that includes you. So I hope that you have that empowerment of knowing that your decisions are making a difference on some level, in some way, that is making an effect somewhere, whether you can see it or not. And I hope you can. And I want to acknowledge that you are doing something important, because I know you for sure are. You're here watching this video. So I know that you're someone who wants to make a difference, wants to align, wants to understand, and wants to be able to be there to support people. So you are doing that. I can validate that for you here and now. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Another thing to decide or to do to apply this energy is to evaluate where your energy is going. And energy can be in the form of the energy you have walking around all day, what you do, the tasks that you accomplish, but it can also be a trade, an exchange of energy. So where you put possessions, where you give gifts, where you put your money, those kinds of things show where your intentions are. And if you think about it that way, then everything becomes energy, which can really also help with a lot of money blocks you might have. It really did help me too. So where are you putting your resources, your funds, both energetically and financially? And who does that support? And how does that sit with you? Are you putting your energy into the things that are important to you? Is your energy working for you? Are your resources working for you? And how can you allocate them or be conscious about them in a way that really makes you feel like you are the one who has made this decision? Remember, putting intention into energy is manifestation, and in some ways is also part of magic. So your magic is your intention in the things that you do, and where you put your energy, and where you spread around whatever wealth that you have, be it just your joy and your smile or other resources that you may be able to share with people. So that's important to know. And also a bonus, right before this day, right before the sun comes into Aquarius, it will have been, of course, at 29 degrees in Capricorn, which gives it the opportunity to send a trine to the North Node. Again, aligning us with that forward direction. The North Node is like the north of a compass. It's telling us where we're going. And the sun sending a trine to that is just saying, hey, just before I change over here, I see you, and I see that we're heading in this direction. And that's kind of just a nice little alignment to just be aware of. Again, it's a pretty quick thing. You may not notice it in the world around you, but notice that the things that are happening are in alignment with where we're supposed to be headed. And there is some kind of faith that we are allowed to have in the actions that are happening around us as we observe them and move along with them, with all the opportunities that we are presented with. So that brings us into the last few days of January. And at this point, it is, we don't have any lunations or any major ingresses with the sun and the moon, but what we do have is the sun conjoining Mercury, as I mentioned before. So really just bringing into light everything that you've gone through in Mercury retrograde up until that point, and then saying, okay, we are here. What are we going to do with the rest of it? How are we going to take all of these things that we now understand, integrate them, apply them, workshop them, and then put them into action once Mercury goes direct again in early February? On the 24th, Mars will ingress into Capricorn. Now, Mars is actually exalted in Capricorn. Mars does really well there. So while Mars can be a bit temperamental, can be a bit hot-headed, in Capricorn, it is in a good condition. So especially if you're doing things at night when Mars is even more comfortable and in their element, it's a great time to really apply your energy to something and know that you will have the energy to break through. Again, Capricorn is enduring. So we have this vital energy of Mars enduring and being able to run a marathon as compared to a sprint. So if you're working on a long-term project and you're really looking for energy to get that done, this is the time to set those goals for yourself. I will be editing a novel at this time and making sure that I am going through and doing revisions and just breaking through things that would normally drag my energy down. This energy will actually give you that robust drive that you need to be able to burst through blocks and not really consider them as much. So this is a great time to say, this is what I'm going to accomplish. And again, Mars will be here for a while, but it is coming in beginning on the 24th of January. You will have this energy to be able to apply to anything that you really need to break through. Any hard things that you haven't wanted to do, now is a great time to say, okay, I'm going to get those done now. I'll have the energy. I will use it. And then on the 25th, Mercury will actually go backwards into Capricorn. So they will be kind of meeting Capricorn at both ends. And this is your opportunity again during Mercury retrograde to look at the foundations of your ideas, look at the foundations of your future plans and say, okay, am I ready to stand on this foundation? Or do we need, again, some maintenance? Do we need to do some tweaking to make sure that from the ground up, this is a tower and not Jenga? So that is a great way to think about it if you're looking for an analogy or a way to picture it in your head. Then lastly, we come into the last few days of January. On the 28th, Mercury retrograde will conjoin Pluto. And this just happened a few days ago where they conjoined while Mercury was direct. Mercury is the messenger. Pluto is the god of the underworld. So again, bringing messages from maybe somewhere that we haven't really recognized in a while, something from a long time ago that we kind of forgot about. Those things may come up. Remember, Pluto, again, is pretty transcendent as far as planets go. It's very far out there. So it is very noticeable, mostly in the collective experience in humanity as compared to in our personal lives. But you may notice this conjunction bringing something up that's like, oh, hey, that. And it could bring something up that needs to finish and just be done. It could bring something up that is ready to begin, that is born of the ashes of something older, something that has now been renewed. Remember the cycle of birth and death, life, and the phoenix cycle of rising from the ashes is a very Plutonian image that is really helpful. The idea of transforming, of going from one way of being to another as part of a cycle is something that we come into here. And with Mercury retrograde, it may be something that is more internal. It's something that we're thinking about on the inside. So this is a great opportunity to journal, to really process anything that comes up for you, and to really lean into what you're feeling and what you're thinking on that day. Just be conscious and present with it and know that it is taking you to a new level. Then on the 29th, Venus goes direct. So Venus will station out of retrograde and move direct again, recovering all those degrees that she covered during retrograde. So now we get to lay things to rest that we've been working on. So anything that's come up, you may notice still is there between January 29th and March 1st. We have plenty of time to really say, okay, this is what's been changing for me, and this is how I want to make sure that it is fine-tuned. So it's kind of laying the blanket on the bed, making the bed that we've now used and will want to make so that it's pretty and we can move forward. And then on January 30th, the final aspect of January will be the Sun square Uranus. So it trined Uranus coming into January, and now it is square. So what that means in a cycle aspect, in a way of looking at everything as cyclical, is it said, hey, Uranus, I see you. great changes. Now we've been working on those changes. We've been initiating those changes. We've been seeing how they're going. And this is the review. This is the sun saying, hey, Uranus, how are those changes going? And that's the opportunity, again, with the square to say, this is something that may not be working great. And now that I know about it, I can do something about it. So Uranus likes to bring pretty quick changes, pretty like flipping kind of changes. If one thing is one way, it may flip over and be something else. So surprises may come up. And if something surprises you, just know this is a day to be surprised. And you do have the ability and the time and the space, thanks to these aspects and the energy around you, to work on those. So may your January end with positive changes that surprise you in the best ways, and with any negative things around you changing for the better. And I hope that that's the way that this energy expresses for you. But just know that this is something, again, with the sun in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus, that it may be just looking at something and saying, hey, that doesn't work the way I thought it would. Good. I can now let this go. I'm going to change a habit and start doing something that serves me in the future, rather than something that I now know is sustainable and helping me from the past. And it can be changed and evolved and grown. So from the trine, where we found something sustainable that worked and supported us, to now where we're now looking towards the future and saying, okay, what changes can we make that will revamp what's going on right now? New habits to begin, new cycles to start, new things to let go of one thing and move into something new, something exciting, which is another Uranian thing to do. So I hope that this has been informative. I hope it's been clear and helpful. And I love your feedback. I appreciate it. I apologize that my voice has been a little weird today, but I thank you guys for your time, for your interest in astrology, and for everything that you do. Again, if you want more information on all of this or more from me, I do personal readings so we can explore your natal chart together. You can find me on TikTok at The Real Crystalline, where I do planetary skits to help really explain each transit in more of a personified way. And you can, of course, always check out the Alchemist Inkwell podcast, where my co-host Emily, who is at Liker of Words on TikTok and Instagram, we go over the energy, the just craziness and wonderfulness and magic of everyday life, and help you to align with that in conscious and amazing and fun ways. So thank you all. I appreciate you. And I hope you have a fantastic new year. I can't believe we're here, but it is so good to be here with you. Bye.